Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mohammed Fathallah, and I'm a member of the Brighter Spark team at Spark, a Center for Social Research Innovation. Welcome to today's Spark Talk with Allison, back to school.
So who's this talk for? It's really for anyone who will find it useful. But I was particularly thinking about graduate school students in the social sciences. Those of you who are in different disciplines, you can translate the recommendations. They sort of work across faculties, but you'll notice a lot of the links, a lot of the sort of focus is particularly on social sciences because that's where Spark is. This is the third year that we at Spark are doing this talk, and the reason that we make it the first Spark talk of every year is that we recognize that there's just a huge amount that happens in the first few weeks, and it can be really overwhelming, and that McMaster is very decentralized. Communication is not always the best, and so it can be hard to find what you're looking for. For those of you who are still kind of getting your feet in graduate school, I'm eager to hear your experiences with this, but I would say graduate education is notably different from undergrad. And so there's a lot more pressure to be organized and a lot more room to make your own decisions, move your own direction, but then responsibility to balance all of what happens when you move your own direction and make your own decisions. Everything here is just what I know as of this date. Like everyone, I am learning about new things across McMaster all the time. In addition to facts, I'm also just giving you some of my thoughts. So take them if they're useful, ignore them otherwise. Lots of people will have lots of opinions for you about your graduate education. And that becomes part of your freedom, is to sort through what's valuable to you and what isn't. Okay. So I'm going to cover some thoughts about how grad school is different from undergrad and how to work with that. Some resources and tools at Mac. Thoughts on people that it is particularly important to know. And then suggestions for engaging with people, particularly with people in administrative positions, with faculty members, and then a couple of general thoughts for keeping healthy and sane. Okay, so how grad school is qualitatively different from undergrad. The goal of undergrad is really to teach you to learn and to think critically. And a lot of the time, particularly in the first couple of years, it's pretty passive. You are receiving a great deal of information. And it really, for some of you, you will have sort of felt it in your last year or two that there started to be a shift towards independent learning. But that kind of explodes in graduate education. Graduate education is about you making the decisions about what to learn and beginning to learn independently.
Yeah, you're basically alone in the ocean.
Yep. And then that's really kind of the goal of a master's program. And then a PhD program, you are expected to generate new knowledge.
Yes.
And if that's not a little intimidating, I would be surprised. Okay. It's not going forward. There we go.
Also, there are two arrows down there on the left. Can you see them? On
Yes.
the left side.
There
You can use
is
anywhere.
yeah, okay.
Button.
So how you might experience that. You may have noticed a focus on theory and methods rather than more substantive content. And the idea is that we want to give you tools that will help you make sense of the world and to apply across situations from well after you're in school. For most people, you're now in what will be your terminal degree. And so there's a lot of consideration on the part of those whose job it is to educate you about the fact that this is a tiny snippet in your life, and you're going to be responsible for learning and growing as the world changes rapidly for the next 40, 50, 60 years. And so it becomes a lot more important for us to give you the tools that are going to help you navigate that regardless of the circumstances, and a lot less focus on trying to give you information. Okay, and then there will be more expectation that you figure out how to apply the tools to your interests. And I know that I teach in the Masters in Public Policy program, and I spend a lot of time working with my students to take sort of basic methods or basic theory and then try to extrapolate out into the things that they care about. And one of the things that we really know, those of us who do a lot of pedagogy, is that it's a true and deep skill set to be able to take something from another context or something more general and figure out how to apply it. That is an art in itself, and it's one that we really want people to be able to grasp in graduate education. Another way that you might experience this is differently. In undergrad, at least for me, it was not uncommon to do most of my studying right before exams. It doesn't work in graduate school. In general, the expectation is that you will be doing a lot of work before class, and you will come to class prepared. You will be able to discuss, you will be able to lead, you will be able to have really ingested what it is that was being shared in the homework or in the readings. So that becomes a major part of how well, not how well you do in your grade. I mean, it shows up there, but in graduate education, it's really not about your grade. It's about you learning the material, and it is all about how much you put into it. And if you think about class as the place where you can cement all of the thinking that you did before class, and you are showing up to be able to take your considerations, your thoughts about what you've engaged with, and then filter them through the experiences of others, and be able to be in conversation and be relaxed about that because you've done the work. That's where a lot of the actual education happens. And then an expectation that you will be responsible for your education. So you'll likely see more projects that take consistent work over longer periods of time. More responsibility for speaking up or figuring out what's confusing. I was having lunch with a colleague the other day. She was telling me that she, in one of her graduate courses, she had a student come up to her on behalf of the entire class and say, "You keep using words in class that we don't know what they mean." And she said, "Okay, well, give me an example." And he said, "Well, heuristic. You use the word heuristic." And she said, "Well, what do you think a heuristic means?" And he sort of stumbled through an answer. She goes, "Yeah, how'd you figure that out?" I said, "Well, you know, when you used it, I went and looked it up because I didn't know what it meant." She goes, "Yeah, there you go." I'm not going to be giving you definitions. You don't know something, you go look it up. It's a shift. And it can be a harder transition for some than others. This is not consistent across professors, but in general, I would say there's a lot less patience with excuses. My attitude with my students is that everybody has to make decisions and everybody has to work with the context that they're in. Sometimes you're not going to show up perfectly. Sometimes you're not going to give 100%. Just do that, embrace it. I don't need to know why. Yeah, that's not, I wouldn't say that that's universal across professors, but in general, I think it doesn't really matter why. You just do as much as you can do, and they just don't really care about why. That may have sounded way too harsh.
But grad school is kind of nice and harsh at the same time. It's like the molten cake.
Well, it's a lot more like the real world.
Yeah, it is.
Where, you know, it's what you deliver. Everyone knows that you're not always going to deliver perfectly every single time. Mistakes happen. And at the same time, all of the reasons, all of the sort of circumstances, it's not really relevant.
Yes.
Okay. How grad school is quantitatively different. More of everything. More readings, larger papers. This is one that someone mentioned to me the other day, that a lot of people coming out of undergrad sort of wrote papers quickly and didn't have a whole lot of experience with revision. You'll be doing a whole lot more revision, a lot more being on the spot, being asked in the moment to work through something, a lot more learning what you want to learn, and sometimes in circumstances where there aren't as many supports to learn it, or it's not part of a curriculum, and then a lot more competing responsibilities. So when Jill was talking about all of the things that they're managing, that's a reality for many graduate students, and it becomes an important part of how you work through what matters to you in your graduate education and where you're focusing. So actually, before I go here, let me stop and see, do people have any examples of other things that you think are sort of notably different or that have surprised you about graduate education? Things that it's worth pointing out?
I think I might add something. I think it's a kind of universal experience. So you are no more in a class that you are learning specific things. Now you are expected to be resilient and learn anything from in any direction that takes you, that basically grad school takes you. You need to be adaptive. You need to be interested. You need to be interested in what you're reading and interested in reading more of what you're reading. So I think this like these stuff are basically my takeaway from grad school so far.
Yeah, I'm curious, the graduate advisors, what are some of the things that you hear from grad students who may be struggling with the transition?
I can say something about that. I would just say the transition to working with a research supervisor and sort of understanding what the expectations are for communicating with a supervisor and figuring out how to build trust and rapport. None of those communications are usually transparent at the get-go and often have to be developed between a student and their committee. So I find that can be quite an ambiguous area for graduate students who are starting out.
That is such a good point. It's probably worthy of a whole talk in itself, how to understand
The chemistry between them.
how to understand the chemistry, how to how to be able to figure out what people that you're reporting to need, and being able to figure out where you shine and how you work well, and negotiating that. Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And I think, all of us who are a bit older and have had careers know all of the mistakes that we made early on, all of the ways that we sort of made it a lot more awkward for ourselves, and to the extent that it can be a little easier, even as it's going to stay ambiguous. I think that's just hugely important. Any other thoughts on kind of what's different or what people have to really navigate? And please speak out. I can't actually see if there are hands or anything. So our advice at the beginning about putting things in chat isn't going to work.
I think one thing that I've kind of seen just as a grad student, like I have a really good working relationship with my supervisor, but like working through those dynamics, sometimes, there's like less engagement from supervisors, and sometimes you have people who, like your supervisors, who are like really involved. So it can go from one spectrum to the other side. And like sometimes it takes seeking supports, finding a mentor to kind of like help you navigate those relationships too.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's important to know that faculty, have, many of them have been doing this a long time, but they also are just people trying to navigate relationships. And so it can be hard, and having conversations around expectations, having conversations around level of freedom, level of engagement, all of that is tricky. And it's all part of these skills and practices that become hugely critical in the real world, and that may not be the basis of your grades in graduate school, but are the basis, I think, of most of what people actually learn.
That's true. I think mostly transferable skills during graduate school are the biggest asset. Like you can be as technically good as you can get in grad school, but these transferable skills of communication, approaching projects, approaching things, and handling things with your supervisor and the team is crucial.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. So a couple kind of practical suggestions around working with the quantity. So the first thing I want to talk about is readings. Because what I have noticed is that a lot of students coming into graduate education are reading as if they would be reading Harry Potter. That they're sort of engaging with the text as it lays out. And that's not the most efficient way to read. You really want to start, in my opinion, you really want to start by understanding the structure of the reading, looking at the headings and subheadings, having a sense of what the outline of what it is you're reading is. Then getting quickly into the major theory, arguments, methods being introduced, the sort of core element of what it is you're reading, and be sure that you really understand what the point is, what it is at a fundamental level, like an elevator talk level, that they are trying to say to you. Most good readings will have a lot of supplemental evidence. They'll have a lot of cases. They'll have a lot of stuff to help elucidate. If you don't have the basics before you get into those, you can get lost in the details. Everyone kind of has their own best way of documenting what they're reading. I'm going to show you my absolute favorite way. So, you might be a highlighter, you might be someone who takes notes. I built an outline of everything I'm reading. and have, I'll actually show you something that Mohammed and I and the rest of our Brighter Spark team did together in a program called Workflowy. I build simple summaries of everything I read. And that habit has been one of the best habits I've developed over my lifetime, because it has made it so that because I have that, I have a very clear sense of things that I read 10 years ago and how they fit and how they can fit with things that I'm reading today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that that would be one of like the greatest takeaways in my life. There's huge amounts of information out there. And I think because of technology now, there's a whole lot of kind of casual consumption without a depth of real understanding. And the process of outlining, and then the process of looking at text together and going back to things, all of that really helps to shift you into the mode of sort of really engaging with arguments and thinking about yourself in conversation with what's happening in the readings. Make note and look up new words. I teach statistics, and so one of the things that I think some of my students are pretty thrown by is the huge amount of vocabulary that they do not know. And I tell them, you know, there's a reason why flashcards are really helpful. Sometimes you just have to learn the new words because they are the lingua franca of all of the things that you're going to read. And so if you don't know the precise definitions, your understanding of what people are going to be saying is always going to be vague.
And you'll be always struggling and keeping up with the flow, right?
Absolutely. Well, and it disrupts the ability to be able to really engage with the topic. So the more you can feel comfortable identifying words that you maybe have a vague sense of, but you don't really know, looking them up, getting clear on them, and being really certain, that's going to make it so much more efficient as you're reading going forward. If you're doing reading for class, think about at least one thing that you can say about the reading in class. Again, because the major goal is to be learning about how to learn for yourself, really work through the effort of making connections between readings and across what's being covered across weeks. A lot of times, professors don't have that much time in class to do the connective tissue. And so it is really important that you are doing that for yourself, that you're making those connections. And then you can talk to your professors about whether the connections you're making are ones that they see as well. That can be a sort of a rich source of conversation. When you're keeping track of what you're reading, consistency in format is absolutely critical. If you're not doing the same thing for everything you read, when, for instance, those who are doing PhDs, when you get to comps, you're in real trouble. So simplicity, consistency, all of that really makes a huge difference in terms of being able to read a great deal quite efficiently and actually retain what it is that you were reading. Okay. More on kind of reading smart. Some methods classes are really good about getting a reference librarian to come in and teach you how to do a rigorous literature search. If that's not part of one of your methods classes, make an appointment with a reference librarian and learn how to do it. No single database, and I'm definitely talking about Google Scholar, includes all of the relevant articles for a particular topic. And so this is the McMaster Library search function. You can search and should search in multiple ways. You want to, there are searches by topic or discipline. There are searches by journal. There are searches by keyword. Being able to really dig into the range of journals and the range of articles and try to grasp the flow of articles talking about any particular subject becomes really important. And so if you're working with a single database, you might get snippets of the conversation, but you can't get to a place where you have sort of a rigorous body of information about any particular topic. Some of the search databases allow you to see all of the articles that were cited by the paper you're reading, and then every article that cites the paper that you're reading. So if you start to think about particularly journal articles and academic literature as a series of conversations, that function becomes really helpful to see how the conversation developed to the place that you're reading and how it developed from it. Okay. Keeping track of what you're reading, we have there are multiple options for citation management. Everyone has their favorite software. So if you ask your advisor, I guarantee you they have one that they use and like. I don't think which software you use particularly matters. It can be really good to use the one that is most commonly used within your discipline, and that your professors, your supervisor are using just because it becomes easier to share them. The main thing is to just start using it consistently, to making sure that everything that you are reading, you have the citations handy for.
And building libraries from the beginning, like whenever you read something, tag it in the software with like the category you're reading, a keyword that really groups these things. That way, whenever you're doing a review afterwards, you can always go back to where did you find this information.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. How are we doing on time?
It is 11:08.
Okay, I am going to skip demoing how we used Workflowy, but this link will take you to an actual lit review that Mohammed and me and the rest of the Brighter Spark team did on all of the literature around research data management. So we asked the research data management librarian at McMaster to give us everything that we should read to be comfortable on the topic. And he probably gave us well over a couple thousand pages. And so this process of outlining and tracking what it was that we really wanted to say about it became really important. And the very cool thing about Workflowy is that you can hashtag things and then search by them. So for instance, we hashtag takeaways. And so then you can see for what the 30, 40 pieces he had us read, you can see the takeaways for each piece. And so it becomes really easy to start to think about kind of how to group them and how to think about the relationships between them. And so that ability to kind of hone away from the specifics and be able to see, see the overall and then move things around appropriately. The right software can just make a huge difference for that. So I'm profoundly grateful to Katie Booth in political science who introduced me to Workflowy, and I am a convert, and it's free. Okay, being organized. Stay on top of your email. Do not work out of your download folder. It will bite you in the butt. Back up everything that you're doing. Gather all your readings early. And as Mohammed said, make sure that they're cited right away. Develop an organization system and workflow for how you're going to work. Use a calendar. And then get consistent about your naming practices and version control on any documents. I'm still getting excuses from graduate school students that they have lost their work.
I would just share something here. Like I found it really helpful for like, for example, any backup service. Like I use OneDrive, and the main thing is that I put everything in OneDrive, and I log in using my Gmail and Outlook account, and that's basically all my assets. So I don't really need my device or my laptop or my PC. Whenever I go to library, I just log in and everything is mine. So it's like you have your own PC anywhere you go, right?
Yeah,
So I would
shifting to the
recommend-
cloud can make a huge difference that
Definitely,
way.
yeah. It helped me a lot. Like I used to like have all my things centralized on my PC, and then that really, when I go to the lab, I then need to access something. It's really not helpful.
Yeah.
So
Okay. For those who organization is not the easiest thing for you, what Mohammed was just saying, I highly agree with, and I framed it as try not to spread yourself across too many platforms. Keep things in a consistent place. There's so we all have access to LinkedIn Learning at McMaster, and there's a good course that I discovered as I was preparing this called Project Management Simplified. Anything that you're not doing in one single period of time is a project, and it's worth taking 5-10 minutes to plan it so that it is smoother and you know that you're going to be able to achieve things on time. No one's perfect at organizing. No one's perfect at sort of managing their time effectively. The idea is to keep growing and to get better and better and to make a commitment to this being part of what you're learning and this being part of what it means to build the professionalism that your graduate education is about. Document naming conventions. Seriously dorky, but a hugely helpful thing. So very specific name for what the thing is, the date, and then last person who worked on it. We have had so many issues in the early days of our research center because we had 10, 12 people working on documents of making sure that we had the newest version. And so when we implemented strict document naming, it solved the problem immediately.
but again, on the cloud, this issue would really be.
Yeah, on the cloud, it
just-
starts to disappear, and autosave is another sort of cloud
Yeah.
feature that's super handy. I will say though that the version control on cloud accounts isn't 100%, and so I still do think it's important to do the document naming, and it takes no more time.
Okay.
Other kind of my last piece of advice about working with the quantity, embrace the intensity. You're going to have immense opportunities, and part of this is accepting that you can't take advantage of all of them. So everyone kind of makes the decision for themselves whether it is better to do a whole lot of things and sort of embrace a whole lot of different experiences, but not be able to go as deep, or whether what you really want is to be able to go really deep into one or two things and go full on with that. And you can do different things over time. I mean, that's the joy, is you have the freedom to try out what feels right. But there will always be FOMO in graduate education, and you need to embrace making the decisions about how you want to focus your time. This is the one that I really wish someone had told me. Not every class is going to matter as much to you, and that's okay. Allocate your time. It is okay to not put 100% into everything. Realistically, you can't. You can't succeed trying to do that in graduate
Also,
education.
don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's
Yeah, do you want to say more about that?
so basically, if you find something that you're struggling with, definitely put time in it, but find something else that you are good at least for the time being, and do 1-2 hours a day in it, so that you wouldn't really waste your energy doing something that's really, really hard and you can't achieve in the meantime, in now. So make sure that there's something that gives you satisfaction, even for an hour a day, or half an hour, anything that makes the day brighter for you. Then by the time you finish struggling with the other thing, everything would be fine.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, take time every day to do something that relieves your stress. The number one thing is physical movement, and kind of what fills you with joy in terms of movement is different for everyone. As Mohammed said at the beginning, I love to dance. It is the one way that I let go of stress. Sometimes it's being in nature, sometimes it's meditation, whatever it is, know that that's non-negotiable. And then watch for harmful coping mechanisms and lead into positive ones. A lot of problematic behaviors develop in graduate school. And so you just need to know that that's a possibility because of the intensity, and manage for it.
Yeah.
And be aware of it, and then seek help if you need to. Okay, so this ended up being a whole lot longer than I had expected. Are we close to 11:20?
Yeah, it's 11:16 now.
Okay, so I'm going to post the entire PowerPoint, but I think probably what's helpful is to just stop with active presenting and hear what people want to know, and then I can come to sort of some of the other sections around resources and tools and things if there's specific stuff you want to know. So my apologies for overestimating how much I could cover in 50 minutes. What are there specific things that would be useful to go into? I can talk about things like software. I can talk about sort of tools for being able to figure out who does what, and kind of what different people study, what kind of research is happening. What would be helpful? Obviously, tips around keeping healthy and sane.
Because I know you guys have the software licensing form as well, which is an amazing thing that you guys do, like Spark does.
Yeah. Yeah, what would people like to talk about?
If I can just ask a couple of questions, maybe they would be, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, by the way, for all of the information. I feel like it's been really helpful. I was wondering if you can provide a bit of introduction as to what resources there are for people working with quantitative data methods. I've been looking into Stata, which I know we can access through UTS. I found that on the Spark page, but I was wondering if there's any sort of like workshops or anything like that, or whether we can book an appointment to go over like really specific things about our research.
Yeah, great question. So for kind of basic introductory software workshops, they're actually starting to do more kind of in-depth and intermediate ones, but they tend to be just like 1 to 3 hours. There's a group called Dash at the library that does a huge number of basic workshops in different statistical software. And so that is sort of the place to go for basic introductions, for sort of specific questions, either the main staff member there, a guy named Vivek Jaden, or or I can work with people on sort of specific issues that you're having with your software. And then again, that's also a place where, depending on the skills of your advisor can also usually help with.
Thank
Or
you so
super-
much. Yeah.
Did you have other things?
I do have another question. I want to make sure that I'm not taking up too much time though. So I don't know, maybe somebody else has another question.
If you do, again, please speak up. I can't actually see hands. We're figuring out hybrid technology, and it's a little trickier than I thought.
Well, it should be very straightforward. It's just like stuff are disappearing.
Go ahead, Alicia. Ask your
Okay,
other
sure.
question.
Thanks. I'm also, so my specific research, I'm at the stage in my PhD research where I'm looking to use a specific method. And I've seen like method schools, for example, and I'm wondering if Spark has anything similar to that, or maybe has any information on some of these. I think they're called like method schools. So I've seen like a couple in the United States and a couple in Europe as well. But I'm wondering if there's anything that Spark offers. I'm specifically looking for qualitative comparative analysis, QCA, but I'm just wondering if there are any sort of schools that like maybe I can inquire if they would have some sort of help or classes or something like that I can take.
Yeah, so to kind of generalize the question a little bit, the starting place for any method is just kind of getting a good handle on it. And the major resource that I love at McMaster, the McMaster library has access to something called Sage Research Methods. It's in the PowerPoint, and we'll make the PowerPoint available, but you can also just search the library website for Sage Research Methods. And Sage is the #1 publisher of social science research methods, books, and sort of tip forums. They have these things called little blue books and little green books that are specific to a whole bunch of different methods. And so that's always my starting point when someone's trying to learn a new method. And then once they have really kind of exhausted that, or kind of basic, more basic resources, then I think it definitely is the point where what you want to do is you want to go to some kind of intensive methods program. So we have just gotten approval from the Board of Governors to start rolling out some formal methods training in Spark, but that's going to be happening gradually over the next couple of years. So it's probably not going to be the answer for you for your for QCA. There are a couple of really good methods programs. So we send people to ICPSR, which is out of, I believe, University of Michigan. They have really, really strong training. However, they tend to be quantitative in focus. The program that I know that focuses specifically on methods training and qualitative is at University of North Carolina, and it's a summer, I think it's called Qualitative Summer Institute. I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot of sort of intensive methodological schools around qualitative methods. There may be others that people know of. Those are the two that I know that I can sort of speak to the quality of, and that I know are truly good programs. And then we have, if you can't find sort of the right individual training, then it often becomes about trying to figure out safe, relatively low stakes ways of being able to work through trial and error yourself. And that's where research conversations with us at Spark can be really helpful, to just try to figure out how you can start to engage with your method in a way where you're not putting your major study at risk in your learning process. So ideally, there would be sort of perfect training for every method readily available. That's not consistently the case, in which case it's often kind of piecing together the information that you do have, and then having people who have done it before to kind of help you navigate how to start out in a way so that you're not going to crash and burn at all.
Thanks. That's really helpful. I know that ECPR, like the European school, offers a methods program too. Maybe I'll send a separate email about this, because I was wondering, some of these schools have like discounted rates if your school is like a member of it, a partner organization, I guess. So maybe I'll ask more specific questions about that at a later time.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've seen a couple of the European ones. I just don't know the programs. So I can't do them directly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think Lynn is going to put up the 1-question survey. Please do take a minute to fill it out. We are always thinking about what is going to be helpful conversations for people, helpful resources. I think it's clear from what we've talked about that it would probably be useful to do one on sort of conversations and negotiations with research teams. So maybe we'll do one of those for spring. Thank you all. Definitely feel free to stay in conversation with me and with Spark. We are here to serve you and to make sure that you have opportunities to do the research that is meaningful to you. So be well and happy and take care. This video will be posted on our Mac video site. You can just search for Spark within a week, and we'll have the PowerPoint there as well. All right, take care. Bye.